Jason, if you could just address what your plans are to address replacing Tom, heading into the draft. Are you guys looking for a quarterback to fill that hole in this draft, or are you looking to address that via free agency?
Yeah, no, we'll look at every avenue. We are in the process of that. It's not an easy thing to do to just replace Tom Brady. I don't think you ever will. But it's you look at the trades, you look who's out there in free agency, you look at the draft. It's not as easy as what my neighbor thinks it is to just go trade for another All-Pro quarterback. Teams believe it or not, tend to not want to let go of their All-Pro quarterback. So we're looking at every avenue, and we look in-house too. Now, Blaine's not under contract right now, but in an ideal world, like to have him back. But also, we're very excited about what Kyle has done this year in his first year in terms of his work ethic and his ability to retain information, and his arm strength and his mobility have all improved, and he really has a lot of resolve to him, which is one of the reasons we liked him in the draft. And he was a successful, prolific player in the SEC, so he'll get every opportunity in the world. So there's been a lot of young quarterbacks that step in and play well, and he'll get every opportunity. So looking forward to that too.
Jason, can you describe the challenge of this year and what you're trying to keep together or put together compared to the challenge of doing it last year?
Yeah, every year presents different challenges, and you have to keep the cap in mind, obviously, that we're all up against. You don't want to mortgage too much of the future, and you want to remain competitive as long as you can. So I think ideally we'd like to keep the core players that we have, the very good players that we have, and they're all very good. And I don't want to name players because I don't want to leave any out, because they're all in one way, shape, or form a priority. But you want to try to keep as many as you can, and you want to keep the pipeline coming from the players that we already have and give them opportunities. So, one door closes, another one opens. And so we feel like we have some players that could surprise some people next year if they're given the opportunity.
Is Keyshawn ready to handle the load?
I think Keyshawn has made massive strides this year. And I think Keyshawn has the ability to be a starting running back. But in that stable, you want multiple running backs that can help carry the load and do different things. So, but we think very highly of Keyshawn.
Speaking of the cap, from your New England days, I'm curious from your philosophy of roster building, how much did learning about role-specific scouting, assigning value to potential players, go into your philosophy of managing and building draft boards and such?
A lot. I've learned a lot from Coach Belichick. Yeah, we could talk here for a long time about that. All the lessons you learn from him, and what he's done is, I don't know if will ever happen again, keeping it sustainable as long as he has. But sure try to take a lot of those things that I learned there and apply them here.
How would you describe it in general? How would you describe what you learned in general, though?
Well, just assigning values, like you said, knowing when to move on from a player, knowing when it's time for from fresh blood. But at the same time, I don't like to let really good players go if we can help it.
Jason, have you completely closed the door on a possible Tom Brady return? Have you completely closed the door on a possible Tom Brady return?
No, I think with a Tom Brady, I personally never want to completely close the door. Now, I don't have any information that suggests that he is going to come back. I mean, I'm very good friends with him. We talk. We haven't talked about that. I don't want to apply any pressure, but in that regard right now. But he's Tom Brady. If a Tom Brady wants to come back, we'd welcome him back.
How difficult would that be financially for you guys? Would you be able to plan and carry out the offseason that you want, knowing that he might?
It just depends. We have a little time here before free agency hits. Depends on what we do in free agency. I'm not saying that we're by any means we're planning on this happening. I just made a remark this morning that we'll leave a light on for him.
So what if Tom Brady comes to you and says, hey, I'd like to finish out my career with another team? Will you grant his wishes or anything like that?
Well, that hasn't happened, so that's a hypothetical. So.
What about Rob Gronkowski? Have you heard anything from him about returning to the team, or is he potentially moving on or retiring at this point?
We'll be talking to Rob's agent here. I think Rob was just want a little time to think about his future. But once again, he's another great player at his position. So would be excited if he did want to come back.
Tom does. Progression of Jordan Whitehead. How much of a priority is he going to be when trying to get him back this offseason?
He's one of those players I mentioned. I didn't want to mention any by name because I didn't want to leave any out. But Jordan has become a very good player for us, and just his presence on defense when we didn't have him due to injury, you could see what we were missing a little bit of juice and from him, and he provided that. He's been a good player for us. He's been a great pick for us. I'm proud of our staff for where we drafted him and what he's become. And ideally, he's another player. I'll keep saying it. Ideally, I'd love to have him back, but we'll have to see how it goes with all these players.
Tom indeed does stay retired. Would you prioritize a veteran quarterback, or would you look to the draft for a younger one?
We would prioritize what we think gives the best chance for us to continue to have success.
What has it been like the last 2 years just to have Tom Brady come in and kind of transform you? Like, what's this experience been like for you?
Well, I had some experience with him in New England, so maybe I wasn't quite as wide-eyed as some of the people around the building. But it's been fantastic. It became normalized to talk to him every day and be a part of what we were doing and just talk to him on the field about anything and everything. He's a special player, special person, and it's hard to say that we'll ever come across another Tom Brady.
Where does Chris Godwin fit into your plans? Chris Godwin, and how is his rehab coming along?
Yeah, from what I understand, his rehab's going well. He's been a special player as well for us. He's really overachieved in relation to where he was drafted and where we got him. It's hard to imagine Buccaneers offense without Chris Godwin, and love to have him back, and we'll continue to try to work towards that.
Jason, could you speak to Tristan Wirfs and his rehabilitation from his ankle injury and how that's going here in this offseason after going down in the playoffs?
It's going well. We want to make sure that he's 100% before he gets back out there. I think there would have been a chance if we continued to play in the postseason that he may have been able to play. But we're going to take it, be very careful with him so when he gets out there and he's fully 100%. So I'm just saying I expect him to be ready for camp. It may be before that.
Jason, did Tristan end up having surgery?
No.
What are your memories of working with Nick Caserio in New England? What do you see him doing in year 2 and how he's working with the Texans now?
Nick he's a great person. He's very, very detailed. Works very, very hard, knows the game very well. He's a very good leader in that regard, and I have nothing but fond memories of working with Nick from when he was a scouting assistant, coaching intern, to moving his way up to where he is now.
Jason, how unexpected was it, on the other hand, have an opportunity for Tom to retire, just given his level of play last season?
Well, when we signed Tom 2 years ago, none of us knew how long it would be. And if it was 1 year, 2 years, I was hoping until he was 50. But no one really knew. And so not really a total shocking surprise when, he's the type that evaluates everything, continues to evaluate everything. And, he literally went out on top if he did, in fact, retire. So we just never took advantage of the days that we had with him and never took them for granted.
You touched on it a little bit earlier, but your depth was tested this year. So did that kind of let you see some guys that maybe you wouldn't have earlier, and with all these impending free agents, know who might step up and who might not?
Yeah, over the last couple of years, but this year particularly, we did have some depth. We did get tested. Our depth did get tested because of some injuries on the defense in particular, and then offensively late in the year. And we were all very proud of the guys that did step up. And we do know with a few players that did get an opportunity, we were able to fully evaluate them to know what their role could be moving forward.
Jason, there's things that you have to account for, like that perhaps Tom was going to retire, but losing a Pro Bowler in Alley, how does that change the way you look at certain things maybe this offseason and this combine?
Yeah, you always want to have, it starts up front. and you always want to have a strong offensive line. And I think our offensive line was a major key to our success in winning the Super Bowl and having a really good record this year. So we want to continue to build that offensive line or retain the players that we have on that offensive line to continue that position group being strong, and we'll just have to see how it goes. Sometimes what you want to do and what happens are two different things, but we definitely ideally would like to keep it moving forward.
You consider the strengths of this draft. Are there any positions that kind of stand out?
Positions that stand out?
Yeah, this draft.
Yeah, there's always a lot. It seems recently a lot of receivers in the draft, so I think that'll continue. There's some good edge rushers in this draft. There's some good corners and safeties in this draft. I don't know if the numbers are as high at those positions as they have been in the past, but in terms of the top of the draft, but there's a lot of depth, in the middle, late rounds at those positions.
So do you sense any momentum from people you talk to about changing the overtime rules for next season?
I really would be I don't know right now. I know there's a lot of chatter about it. And I know that we'll hit on that at the owners' meetings.
Jason, is there a young player on your roster that you were most proud of last season?
A young player? Well, I'll single out two, KJ Britt and Grant Stewart, for the roles that we drafted them for and to play on special teams. I thought they did a fantastic job, and they'll continue to grow as position players as well. And we have a lot of we think KJ's got a really good chance to be a good linebacker as well as Grant in some sort of role on defense at some point. So I was just the way they brought their energy every day. I thought was really the entire team benefited from just the way they carried themselves.
Jason, what does Joe Tryon-Shoyinka need to do to take the next step in his development?
Well, we thought he made some big steps. He played mostly in rotation. He's going to have to get a little bit stronger and a little bit more discipline in the run game, but that will come, and that's easy to. That usually happens with a young pass rusher coming in for his first year as a rookie. So that's the thing that you need to develop the most. He's definitely skilled as a rusher and has upside as well as there, and we'll get better there as well.
At this time, everybody's saying like there might not be a top 10 caliber quarterback in this draft. Do you buy that? Or once we get close to the draft, all the quarterbacks get pushed up every year, and teams that want a quarterback are going to have to make a move to get one?
Well, it does happen every year. Quarterbacks usually do get pushed up. And, we say that we predict what these quarterbacks are going to do, but then one can go 199 and become the greatest player of all time. So, people are going to pick their poisons. Other people may think that quarterbacks have them rated higher or lower than what we do. But yeah, in general, quarterbacks usually do get pushed up.
What's your interest level in the quarterback trade market? And do you get a sense around the league that things are heating up? Is there a lot of talk about quarterback trades at this point?
There's always some chatter. There's always some talk. It's usually a little bit more talk than it is action.
Jason, you had a young kicker that you kept on the practice squad all season. Do you expect there to be competition at kicker this year?
I think he will compete. We love what Suckup has done for us the last couple of years, but Jose has a strong leg and he's been consistent for us all year in practice. Practice and games are two separate things, but I think I am excited to see what he does this year in camp.
What's your biggest deterrent when evaluating a quarterback?
I think one thing that doesn't get talked about enough, and just because we have seen the best for the last couple of years, is the leadership that a quarterback has and how important that is. How his teammates feel about him and how they want to work for him and how he gets the best out of his players. He doesn't have to be the most talented, doesn't have to have the strongest arm. He does need to be smart, and he does need to be a true leader in order to get the best at and elevate his teammates. And that's hard to gauge.
A couple more questions, please.
Talk about the priority of re-signing Ryan Jensen.
Yeah, sure. He's been the center pivot of our offense. We signed him when we did to elevate and set the tone of the toughness of the team, and he's definitely done that. So I think for me, it's a definite priority. I want to continue that.
When you see how well your coaches have developed young cornerbacks, does that make you more likely to want to bank on a rookie or to draft one with a premium pick?
I think it's going to depend on who's there, on how much we like the quarterback and how much we like him compared to other players that are on the board. I don't believe necessarily in just taking a quarterback to take a quarterback.
I was saying cornerback.
Oh, cornerback. I'm sorry. Yeah, I wish we had 15 picks so we could take multiple players, especially in the secondary, because, it's just by law of averages, they're not going to work. They're not all going to work out. But the ones that do, you put a premium on. So cornerback is a very important part of the defense. I would say pass rusher, corner, your offensive line, and quarterback. So